Dear Sylvia, I know I shouldn't write this. I know it can get me killed, but I have to say something. Someone has to know, and the only person left I could tell is you. The Everest Society is not what it seems. We aren't the tree huggers we're made out to be. No, we are far, far worse than anyone thought. Not that anyone thought we were perfect, but they have no idea what's really hidden within the Everest Society. None of the trees we said we would plant were planted. We planted other things. Ideas in people's heads. We tried to get everyone from the inside out. Money was spent on various things, bribes, threats, propaganda. Of course, our donations were never enough. We stole and we bought. We owned many large corporations, and soon we didn't need our donations to sustain us. We could pay back the money we stole, but we never did. We kept buying things, and when we couldn't buy it, we took it by other means of force. So yes, Sylvia, I did join them, and I'm afraid it might have been my worst mistake. I'm afraid, Sylvia, of the things they'll do, of the consequences of what's already been done. Somebody has to do something. Please, Sylvia, do something. D.
Hi, I'm Bethany Lark, though that probably doesn't mean much to you. Here I am, hoping I'll change something by recording this. If Everest finds out, I don't want to think about what's going to happen to me. But I've got to talk about it. I have to, or I'll go insane. That's why I'm making these. It's the only way to find out if anyone will believe me. So I'll start from the beginning. The very beginning. It was the end of something before it was the beginning of anything. It was the end of my great-grandmother Sylvia's life. I didn't know her well, but from the sounds of it, no one knew her well. It sounded like she had been a recluse her whole life, only letting a few certain people in. We'd all worn black and said nice things, but even my grandmother, Sylvia's own daughter, could recall very little about her. It was for this reason that we were all very curious about the reading of her will. It was all very standard. Most of what she had went to her only daughter. Most of it. There was a small black chest that hadn't been accounted for. Sylvia's lawyer cleared her throat nervously.
She asked that it be burned.
Well, that's just absurd, my Aunt Crystal said shrilly. If she wanted it to be burned, she could have done it herself. I certainly am not going to. My relatives muttered their agreements, but I found myself standing up. I'll do it, I said, suddenly aware of their eyes on me. I can burn it, I muttered. The lawyer looked at me for a moment and sighed.
It's all yours, miss. What was your name again? I need to write it down.
Bethany, I stuttered. Bethany Lark. Oh, her, I heard someone mutter. The one who dumped Darren Brown. Shame, he's such a nice boy. Darren Brown had been my fiancé. The breakup had been mutual. We'd talked it over and decided that we weren't right for each other. But my family never heard from Darren after we cut it off. All they heard was me saying that we broke up, and they assumed. My family had adored Darren, more than either of us had adored each other, and the breakup had made me a villain in their eyes. The lawyer jotted something down and handed me the chest. It was surprisingly light, and I frowned as my relatives filed out of the room. Do you know why she wanted it burned, miss?
I'm afraid not. All it said in the will is that she wanted it gone.
Oh, thank you.
Miss Bethany, do be sure to burn it. Sylvia was very intent upon it. Whatever is in that box is something your family shouldn't keep around.
I nodded and left. The bike ride home brought many questions into my head. I was curious. I couldn't help it. But it was more than just curiosity that had gotten me to take the box. It was a spite of sorts, a spiteful feeling because my family couldn't get over Darren Brown. I nearly didn't give in to that feeling. I nearly just let it be, let everyone mutter their distaste about the box, and mutter my own too. But I didn't, and my relatives hated me for it. Not that I cared much what they thought, not anymore anyways. Why had Sylvia wanted the box burned? What was inside it? Did the lawyer really not know, or was she lying to me? As I biked up to my apartment building, the box felt heavy with its secrets. different from the lighter box I'd taken from the lawyer. In my tiny apartment, I set the box down on the kitchen table, which was really just a card table with a tablecloth on top of it. The box seemed to stare at me, teasing me with the knowledge it withheld. I frowned. I had no real way to burn it, and I didn't plan to either, not until I understood. I started to pry open the box, and to my surprise, it popped open without a struggle. I frowned and pulled out a stack of a dozen-some envelopes. There were 2 more stacks in the chest. I pulled the top envelope out of the stack. They were strange envelopes, black paper with silver ink and old stamps that had photos of trees on them. Curious, I opened the first envelope. It was addressed to Sylvia, and it talked about a society. A horrible society called Everest. It was signed simply with the letter D. Intrigued, I took out the second envelope and began reading it. I didn't know then. I didn't know how powerful Everest actually was, that I would actually be in danger reading those letters instead of burning them. But I would have read the letters either way. I know that. I wasn't reading them because I was simply curious. I was reading them to forget about my crummy, boring job at the paperclip manufacturing factory. I was reading them to forget about my hostile family. I was reading them to forget about Darren Brown. And so, blissfully ignorant, I continued reading the letters I should have burned. Yo, this is your boy Bethany. The Everest Letters is a production of the Everest Society. It was produced and written by Laura Archibald and Maddie Theobald. The voice of Dee is James Rutherford. The voice of Bethany is Ellie Bodeli. The voice of Sylvia's lawyer is Paige Vizio. The music is by Tommy Dorsey. We love you, Tommy Dorsey. Heart! Thank you for listening to the first episode of the podcast. We hope you will return for episode 2.